Sent to negotiate peace, he unexpectedly became the husband of an alien princess. But Ethan knew better. The calm surface hid a civilization that was proud, secretive, and deeply suspicious of humans. For months, tensions had been rising over trade routes and mining rights on the outer colonies near Zyphera. Now it was his job to stop it from escalating into war. He let out a deep breath. As a diplomat, Ethan had been trained for negotiations, for conflict resolution, and for patience. But nothing in his training had prepared him for this, being the first human diplomat to Zyphera in over 100 years. The last envoy had been sent back in disgrace after a failed negotiation, and Ethan had inherited the weight of those failures. The transport shuttle shuddered as it entered Zyphera's atmosphere. Outside the small window, cloud patterns shifted like rivers in the sky, and glimmers of sunlight danced across the oceans. Ethan's heart raced. He had read the reports, studied the customs, memorized the protocols. But the moment he stepped onto Zypheran soil, all that knowledge would be tested. The shuttle landed with a soft thud in the capital city, Luminara, a sprawling metropolis of silver towers and crystalline streets. As the hatch opened, a wave of fresh air, scented faintly with alien flora, washed over him. Ethan stepped onto the platform, scanning the crowd of Zypheran officials waiting to greet him. They were tall, with graceful postures and shimmering skin that reflected light like polished stone. Their eyes were large, expressive, and slightly angled, giving them an air of constant curiosity. Ethan forced a polite smile. These were the leaders he had to impress, and the slightest misstep could ruin everything. "Welcome, human diplomat," said a voice that was soft, yet carried a commanding tone. A Zypheran official stepped forward, bowing slightly. "I am Marek, advisor to the Royal Council. Your journey was swift, yet safe, thanks to our escort." Ethan inclined his head respectfully. "Thank you, Advisor Marek. I hope my presence can help bring peace to our two peoples." Marek's gaze lingered on him, sharp and measuring. "We hope the same, human, but words are not enough here. Actions are valued more than promises." Ethan nodded. He had expected as much. In a civilization built on honor and ritual, his reputation would depend on what he could do, not what he said. The group moved through the streets, passing crystalline buildings that shimmered in every color of the spectrum. Flying vehicles hovered silently above, gliding past towers that seemed impossibly tall. Zyphera was advanced, more advanced than Earth in many ways, but Ethan knew that technology alone did not define a civilization. Understanding their culture and thinking would be just as important. As they entered a grand hall, Marek spoke again. "The Royal Council awaits your audience, but first you will be briefed on the customs of our people. It is unusual for humans, so pay careful attention." The hall was breathtaking. It was circular, with a high ceiling that glowed faintly with soft, golden light. The floor was polished, reflecting the figures standing above it like a mirrored lake. Zypherans of all ranks were gathered, their eyes studying Ethan with a mix of curiosity and calculation. A woman stepped forward, her presence commanding yet elegant. She was Princess Lyria, the heir to the Zypheran throne. Ethan felt a twinge of nervousness. Royal meetings were already intimidating, and this one carried the weight of an entire planet. Lyria's gaze met his, calm and unreadable, as if she could see through to his thoughts. "Human diplomat," she said, her voice melodic and precise. "Welcome to Zyphera. I am Princess Lyria. Your arrival is noted. We hope your intentions are as honorable as your mission suggests." Ethan bowed respectfully. "Princess Lyria, it is an honor to be here. I come with a message of peace from Earth and a desire to find solutions that benefit both our civilizations." She nodded slightly, but said nothing further. Ethan noticed that the Zypherans around her exchanged subtle glances. He realized that in their culture, words were only part of communication. Gestures, postures, and attention carried meaning as well. Every move he made would be interpreted and judged. The briefing began. Marek explained the complex hierarchy of Zypheran society, the importance of ritual gestures, and the way alliances were formed. Ethan listened intently, taking notes in his mind. He had studied this before, but hearing it in person added layers he had not anticipated. "The ritual of greeting," Marek explained, "is not merely polite. It is a contract of intent. One gesture can signify loyalty, one misstep can imply offense. Remember this." Ethan nodded. The words settled heavily in his mind. One wrong gesture could derail everything. And yet he reminded himself he was here to build bridges, not to falter at the first step. The evening came, and with it, a ceremonial feast. Humans rarely experience such formalities, and Ethan felt both awe and unease. He observed the Zypherans carefully, the way they moved, the way they interacted, and the subtle signs of status. Lyria sat at the center, regal and poised. Her presence dominated the room, but she did not speak much, letting the proceedings unfold around her. At one point, a misstep occurred. Ethan extended his hand, following what he thought was a polite gesture, but Lyria's reaction froze him in place. There was a brief pause, and then Merrick stepped in, his expression unreadable. "Human diplomat," he said, "you have made a gesture that in our culture signifies bonding. This is not a simple greeting." Ethan's eyes widened. "Bonding," he repeated, his heart raced. I didn't mean," Merrick raised a hand. "Intent does not matter in this ritual. The act itself binds the parties according to our customs." Ethan swallowed hard. This was unexpected. He had come to negotiate peace, not to enter into alien traditions that could entangle him in obligations he did not understand. But there was no going back now. The eyes of the entire hall were on him, and the weight of history pressed against his shoulders. Princess Lyria's gaze met his again, calm and unreadable. Ethan felt a strange mixture of fear and fascination. She did not seem angry or offended. If anything, she seemed intrigued. For the first time, he realized that this encounter was not just about diplomacy. It was about humanity and its ability to adapt, to survive, and to connect even across the vast gulf of species and culture. The remainder of the evening passed with careful etiquette. Ethan followed every instruction, observed every nuance, and avoided further missteps. But his mind kept returning to the moment of the ritual, to the unintended bond he had entered. It was a puzzle he would have to navigate, and it would affect not only his mission, but also the future of relations between humans and Zypherans. After the feast, Ethan retired to his quarters, a small but comfortable room provided by the palace. He sat by the window, looking out over the glowing city. The sky was filled with the soft luminescence of Zyphera's moons, casting silver light over the towers. He thought about what lay ahead: negotiations, cultural trials, political intrigue, and perhaps an unexpected connection with Princess Lyria herself. Ethan knew one thing for certain: the mission would not be simple. It would test his patience, his intelligence, and his ability to think like a Zypheran while staying true to himself. And if he succeeded, he could prevent a war, forge an alliance, and perhaps prove that humanity had something to offer even in the most alien of circumstances. He leaned back in his chair and allowed himself a small smile. For the first time, he felt the thrill of possibility. Peace was not guaranteed, but Ethan Cade was ready to fight for it, not with weapons, but with courage, creativity, and the uniquely human ability to adapt. And somewhere deep inside, he felt a spark of curiosity and anticipation. The story had only begun, and already it promised to be unlike anything he, or the galaxy, had ever seen. The next morning, Ethan awoke to the soft golden light of Zyphera's twin suns streaming through his quarters. The events of the previous evening weighed heavily on him. The accidental bonding gesture during the ceremonial feast was still fresh in his mind. He had meant no offense, had no intention of entering any obligation, but on Zyphera, intent did not matter. The act itself carried meaning, binding him in ways he did not yet understand. Ethan dressed quickly, trying to organize his thoughts. Today was the day he would meet Princess Lyria again, formally, to discuss the peace negotiations. He wondered how much she knew or suspected about his confusion. Zypherans were skilled at reading expressions, body language, and subtle cues. He would have to be careful, precise, and cautious. As he entered the palace corridors, he was greeted by Merrick, who looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and sternness. "Human diplomat," Merrick said, "today is important. The princess will meet with you in the Hall of Understanding, where discussions of alliances and contracts are conducted. Remember, your actions carry as much meaning as your words." Ethan nodded. He had only just begun to understand Zypheran culture, and every step seemed to reveal a new layer of complexity. But he also realized something important. He could not approach this situation with fear. The humans who had survived and thrived for centuries did so because they adapted. That same adaptability, he hoped, would serve him well here. The Hall of Understanding was vast, its walls lined with shimmering crystals that reflected the light in soft, dancing patterns. At the center of the room stood Princess Lyria, her posture regal, her eyes focused and steady. Ethan took a deep breath and approached, bowing respectfully as custom demanded. "Princess Lyria," Ethan said, his voice steady. "I hope to discuss terms that will bring lasting peace between our peoples." Lyria regarded him silently for a long moment. Her gaze was intense, almost piercing. Then, to Ethan's surprise, she spoke with a tone of gentle curiosity. "Human, you have made a gesture of binding. Do you understand what it means in our culture?" Ethan swallowed. I understand now, Princess. I did not intend it as a bond. I meant only to greet you with respect." Lyria's eyes softened slightly. "Intent is noted, but in our customs, the gesture itself forms a bond. Whether it is accepted or denied, it cannot be undone so easily." Ethan's stomach tightened. He had expected confusion or anger, not this calm, measured explanation. "Then, what does this mean for me?" he asked. "It means," Lyria replied, "that you are now connected to me, human. How you navigate this bond will determine much of your future here, your role in diplomacy, and perhaps your place in Sci-fi itself." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Ethan realized that this was no longer simply about a negotiation. His life and the mission he had trained for so long was about to become entwined with the princess in ways he had never anticipated. Marek stepped forward. "There are ways to navigate this bond, human. You may choose to honor it, in which case you will be considered a partner to the princess. Or you may attempt to resolve it through the ritual of understanding, which tests the character, wisdom, and courage of the individual. But be warned, this is not a simple trial. It is designed to reveal truth, loyalty, and resilience." Ethan nodded slowly. He had faced difficult negotiations before, but never anything like this. The idea of undergoing a ritual to prove himself, not as a diplomat but as someone bound by an alien culture, was intimidating. Yet he also felt a spark of determination. Humans had survived countless challenges by using ingenuity, courage, and empathy. If he could navigate this, he could show Zypherans the value of human perspective. "Very well," Ethan said. "I am ready to face the ritual of understanding." Lyria tilted her head, studying him. "Then we begin. Follow me." They moved through the palace to a courtyard filled with alien flora, glowing softly under the light of the twin suns. The air was fragrant with unfamiliar scents, and the soft hum of Zyphera's wildlife created a rhythm that was almost musical. At the center of the courtyard stood a series of platforms, each one carved with symbols and patterns that Ethan did not recognize. "This is the first stage," Lyria explained. "It tests your perception and adaptability. You will encounter challenges that require more than strength. You must observe, understand, and act with clarity." Ethan took a deep breath and stepped forward onto the first platform. Instantly, the ground shifted beneath him, forming a puzzle of floating tiles. Some were solid, others disappeared when stepped on. The platform seemed almost alive, reacting to his movements. He paused, studying the pattern carefully. Then he began to move, testing each tile before committing his weight. Slowly but steadily, he navigated the path, using logic, intuition, and careful observation. Halfway across, a tile vanished beneath him, but he leapt to the next, steadying himself. Sweat prickled on his forehead, but he pressed on, determined not to fail. When he reached the end, the platform glowed with a soft light, signaling success. Lyria nodded, her expression thoughtful. "You have shown clarity of thought and adaptability. Good. But the trial is only beginning." The next stage took place in a hall filled with alien machinery and strange devices. Marek explained that this test measured problem-solving under pressure. Ethan was presented with a device that seemed incomprehensible at first, wires, lights, and levers moving in patterns that defied immediate logic. He studied it, recalling principles of physics and engineering he had learned on Earth. Slowly, patterns emerged. He began to manipulate levers and buttons, adjusting them in sequence. Lights blinked, machinery hummed, and the device responded to his actions. After several tense minutes, it activated fully, opening a pathway forward. "You see, human," Lyria said, her tone carrying approval, "your mind works differently than ours. You find solutions where we often see only complexity. This is why your perspective is valuable." Ethan felt a surge of pride. For the first time, he realized that humanity's adaptability, creativity, and resourcefulness could be respected, even admired by an alien civilization. But the trials did not end there. The final stage required him to confront a scenario designed to test morality and courage. A simulated crisis appeared, a holographic village under threat from a natural disaster. Ethan had to make choices: who to save first, how to allocate limited resources, and how to manage panic among the villagers. Each decision affected the outcome. He acted quickly, relying on human empathy and strategic thinking. He organized evacuations, prioritized the most vulnerable, and coordinated rescue efforts. When the simulation ended, the village had survived with minimal loss. Lyria's eyes reflected a mixture of respect and surprise. "You have passed the trials, human," she said. "Your mind, your courage, and your heart have proven worthy. The bond we share is now recognized not as an accident, but as a connection of mutual respect and understanding." Ethan exhaled, relief washing over him. The weight he had feared, the cultural obligation, the potential scandal, had transformed into an opportunity to build trust and alliance. He glanced at Lyria and noticed a small, almost imperceptible smile. "You have done well," she said softly. "Few outsiders could have succeeded. It is not just skill or knowledge that matters here, it is character, and you have shown yours." Ethan felt a strange warmth at her words. Though the bond had begun as a misunderstanding, it was evolving into something meaningful, an alliance that carried both political and personal weight. He realized that diplomacy was not just about words or treaties. It was about understanding, trust, and connection. The day ended with a quiet walk through the palace gardens. The alien plants glowed faintly, illuminating the paths with soft light. Ethan and Lyria walked side by side, speaking carefully, learning about each other's cultures, hopes, and dreams. "You see, human," Lyria said after a moment of silence, "it is not enough to simply negotiate. One must understand the heart of a civilization to guide it toward peace. You have shown you can do this." Ethan smiled, realizing how much he had learned in just a single day. "I hope to learn even more, Princess. Humans may be different, but we can offer ideas, courage, and solutions that are unexpected." Lyria nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "Unexpected solutions are often the most valuable. You have shown that, human." Perhaps this bond, accidental as it began, is meant to be a bridge between our worlds and between us. As they returned to the palace, Ethan reflected on the day. He had faced trials that tested his mind, heart, and courage. He had learned that humanity's greatest strength was not technology or strength, but adaptability, empathy, and ingenuity. And he had formed a connection with Princess Lyria, one that would shape not only his mission, but the future of both human and Xipheran civilizations. The night fell over Luminara, painting the city in silver and blue. Ethan returned to his quarters, exhausted but exhilarated. The bond, once a source of fear, now felt like a challenge he was ready to embrace, a challenge that would define him and perhaps change the galaxy. For the first time, Ethan Cade understood the true power of being human, to adapt, to learn, and to connect, even in worlds far beyond his own. And with that understanding, he knew that the story of humanity on Zyphera had only just begun. The following morning, Ethan awoke with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. The bond with Princess Lyria, now recognized and respected by Xipheran law, was no longer merely ceremonial. It carried responsibility. It meant that every action he took, every word he spoke, would reflect not only on himself, but also on the humans who had sent him to Zyphera. He dressed quickly and left his quarters, moving through the palace halls with careful attention. Today, he was to undergo the next stage of the Xipheran trials, one that tested trust, decision-making, and integrity. Marek met him at the entrance to the courtyard, his face calm but unreadable. "Human," Marek said, "your first trials tested your mind and courage. Today, your judgment and trustworthiness will be examined. You will interact with individuals of different ranks and roles. Observe carefully, act wisely, and remember that Zyphera values truth above all." Ethan nodded, absorbing the weight of the words. In human diplomacy, negotiation often relied on persuasion or compromise. Here it was clear that Zypherans valued integrity and honesty in every action. He would have to earn their trust, not simply convince them with words. Princess Lyria appeared beside him, her presence calm and reassuring. "Human," she said, "today's trial will show whether you can navigate the complexities of our society while remaining true to yourself. You must decide carefully whom to trust, how to act, and when to speak. Your choices will be observed and consequences may follow." Ethan felt the gravity of her words. This trial was different from the physical puzzles and simulations of yesterday. It involved people, politics, and subtle perception. One mistake could undo the progress he had made. The first test took place in the Hall of Councils, a room where Xiferan advisors and nobles gathered to discuss matters of state. Ethan entered cautiously. Around him, dozens of Xiferans moved with purpose, exchanging words, gestures, and glances. Marek explained the scenario. Several factions within the council are undecided about peace with humans. You must mediate a dispute among them. Your goal is not to impose your will, but to demonstrate fairness, empathy, and strategic thinking. Observe the relationships, identify motives, and act to create understanding. Ethan swallowed. Humans were skilled negotiators, but Xiferan customs were unfamiliar. He had to carefully study the interactions before making any move. He began by listening. One group of advisors emphasized caution, arguing that humans were unpredictable and could not be trusted. Another group saw opportunity, believing that cooperation with Earth could bring technological and cultural benefits. Ethan noticed subtle cues, how a hand gesture indicated support, how a glance could signal suspicion, how the tone of voice suggested hidden concerns. He realized that the true challenge was not just the debate itself, but understanding the people behind the words. He spoke carefully, acknowledging both sides. "I understand your caution," he said, "and your desire for security. Humans have made mistakes, but we also bring skills, knowledge, and perspectives that can benefit Xiphera. The path forward must respect your concerns while allowing cooperation to flourish." The Xipherans studied him, their expressions unreadable. A tense silence filled the room. Then, slowly, some advisors nodded, while others exchanged thoughtful glances. Ethan felt a quiet surge of relief. His words had begun to bridge the gap. Next, he faced a test of loyalty and integrity. He was presented with information suggesting that a minor faction was plotting against the peace talks. The Xiferans wanted him to report the details immediately, without verification. Ethan hesitated. Human diplomacy often relied on careful investigation, on confirming facts before taking action. Acting impulsively could cause unnecessary conflict or alienate potential allies. He chose to investigate discreetly, gathering evidence and speaking with those involved. Through observation and conversation, Ethan uncovered the truth. The faction was misinformed, not malicious. Their actions were driven by fear rather than hostility. He reported this to Marek and Lyria, explaining his reasoning and the evidence he had gathered. Lyria's gaze softened, reflecting approval. "You have shown discernment and patience, human. Trust is not gained through haste, but through understanding. You have demonstrated the qualities of a true ally." Encouraged by this success, Ethan moved to the final stage of the trial, a scenario designed to test courage, compassion, and decision-making under pressure. He was led to a simulation chamber, where a holographic village faced multiple threats. A sudden storm, injured residents, and limited resources. He had to decide whom to assist first, how to allocate help, and how to maintain order while ensuring no one was left behind. Ethan acted quickly, prioritizing those in immediate danger while coordinating others to aid the community. He improvised solutions, using knowledge of engineering and human problem-solving to stabilize damaged structures and create safe passage for residents. The simulation responded to his actions. Residents were rescued, the storm's effects minimized, and the village remained intact. Lyria and Marek observed silently, their expressions calm but attentive. "You have succeeded, human," Lyria said after a pause. "Your decisions reflect courage, empathy, and practical intelligence. Xiferans value action guided by principle, and you have proven yourself worthy." Ethan exhaled, feeling the weight lift from his shoulders. These trials were grueling, not just physically or mentally, but emotionally. They had tested his ability to think, act, and adapt in ways that were unfamiliar yet essential. As they exited the chamber, Lyria spoke quietly. "Your humanity is remarkable. You do not think as we do, yet you find solutions we cannot. That is why your perspective is valuable, not only to me but to all of Xiphera." Ethan felt a sense of pride, but also humility. He realized that being human did not mean superiority. It meant creativity, empathy, and resilience. These qualities, when applied thoughtfully, could earn trust even in a civilization vastly different from his own. But the trials were not finished. Upon returning to the palace, Ethan learned of a new challenge, the presence of Xiferan nobles who opposed the peace treaty. Some had begun spreading rumors and seeking to undermine him, questioning his intentions and loyalty. Ethan was not surprised. Politics, even among humans, was rarely straightforward. The key was to remain calm, to gather information, and to act with integrity. He began meeting with these nobles individually, listening to their concerns, asking questions, and demonstrating that his goal was not personal gain but mutual benefit. Slowly, he began to earn their respect. His careful diplomacy, combined with his proven courage and integrity, allowed him to bridge divides that others could not. Some nobles remained skeptical, but they could not deny his results. The successful trials and his thoughtful approach to challenges had earned him credibility. During this period, Ethan also had moments alone with Princess Lyria. Their conversations grew deeper, exploring not only politics and culture, but also personal experiences, dreams, and fears. Lyria shared stories of her childhood, of the pressures of leadership, and of the responsibilities she carried as heir to Xiphera. Ethan, in turn, shared his life on Earth, the lessons he had learned, and his hopes for a peaceful future. These exchanges created a bond beyond the ceremonial, one built on mutual understanding, respect, and curiosity. One evening, as they walked through the palace gardens, Lyria stopped by a glowing tree, its leaves shimmering with a soft, silver light. "Human," she said, "many outsiders have come to Xiphera seeking advantage or conquest. You have come with caution, yet your actions speak of integrity. That is rare." Ethan smiled faintly. "I did not come here seeking power. I came to prevent conflict. I believe humans and Xipherans can learn from each other if given the chance." Lyria nodded. "Then perhaps the bond we share is not just symbolic. It may represent something greater, a bridge between our worlds." Ethan felt the truth of her words. The accidental bond, once a source of fear, had transformed into a symbol of cooperation and trust. It was more than ritual. It was a promise that humans and Xipherans could work together, combining ingenuity, courage, and understanding to shape the future. The day ended with a quiet dinner in the palace, where Ethan was treated as an honored guest. Conversations flowed, and for the first time he felt truly integrated into Xipheran society. The nobles who had opposed him were still cautious, but they had begun to recognize his sincerity and skill. As he retired to his quarters, Ethan reflected on the events of the day. He had faced challenges that tested not only his mind, but also his heart. He had navigated politics, diplomacy, and complex social dynamics, proving that humans could adapt and thrive even in alien environments. He understood now that the true trial was not the physical puzzles or simulations, but the ability to earn trust, respect, and understanding. And in that, he had succeeded. Looking out over the glowing city of Luminara, Ethan felt a sense of purpose. The path ahead would not be easy. There were still conspiracies to uncover, challenges to face, and alliances to strengthen. But he had proven that humanity's qualities were more than capable of meeting the test. For the first time, he felt confident that the bond with Princess Lyria was not a mistake, but a beginning, an opportunity to build something lasting, meaningful, and transformative. And with that thought, he allowed himself to rest, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new trials, and new opportunities to prove the strength of being human. The morning light of Xiphera's twin suns spilled across Luminara, painting the crystal towers in shades of gold and silver. Ethan Cade stood on the balcony of his quarters, looking out over the city. What had started as a diplomatic mission had become far more complicated than he had imagined. His bond with Princess Lyria was now recognized by law, his trials had earned respect, and yet a new challenge was emerging, one far subtler and more dangerous than any puzzle or simulation. He had begun to notice whispers among some of the Xipheran nobles. The same factions who had been skeptical of humans and cautious about peace were growing restless and secretive. Rumors were circulating, rumors that humans were plotting to dominate Xiphera, or that the bond between him and Lyria was being used to manipulate the throne. Ethan knew better. Humans had arrived on Xiphera seeking peace, not power, but perception was reality in politics. One mistake, one misunderstood gesture, and the fragile progress he had made could crumble. Marek arrived silently, as was his habit, his expression serious. "Human, there is reason to believe that not all is as it seems," he said. Some Xiferan nobles may be working against the peace treaty. Their influence could disrupt the negotiations if left unchecked. Ethan nodded, his mind sharpening. Then we need to uncover their intentions before they act, but carefully, no accusations without evidence. That would only make them more defensive. Wise, Merrick replied. You will need caution, observation, and cleverness. Your bond with Princess Lyria may prove useful, but you must also act discreetly. The first step was subtle observation. Ethan spent the morning attending council meetings and social gatherings, paying attention to words, gestures, and expressions. He noticed small signs, a slight hesitation in a noble's tone when the treaty was mentioned, a glance exchanged between two advisors, a hand gesture that indicated secret communication. By afternoon, Ethan had begun to piece together a pattern. A faction led by a noble named Varric was actively undermining support for human Xiferan cooperation. Varric was charismatic and intelligent, using rhetoric to appeal to fear and tradition. He warned others that humans could not be trusted, painting the peace treaty as a risk to Xiphera's sovereignty. Ethan knew that confronting Varric directly would be risky. The noble was influential, and any misstep could make Ethan appear manipulative or arrogant. He needed a strategy that would reveal the truth without creating open conflict. That evening, Lyria approached him as he reviewed notes in his quarters. "Human, you have been studying our council closely," she said. Her tone was calm but pointed. "I sense that you are aware of unrest among certain nobles. What is your plan?" Ethan looked up, meeting her gaze. "Princess, there is a faction that doubts the treaty and questions our motives. I believe they may try to sabotage the process, but confrontation could backfire. We need a careful approach, subtle investigation, gathering evidence, and building alliances quietly." Lyria nodded thoughtfully. "I trust your judgment. Your perspective is different from ours, and that difference may allow you to see what others cannot." Encouraged, Ethan devised a plan. He would attend social events, converse with nobles casually, and observe patterns. At the same time, he would rely on small, discreet acts of diplomacy to win over undecided council members, showing them that humans could be allies rather than threats. The first opportunity came the next day during a ceremonial feast. Nobles gathered to celebrate the anniversary of Xiphera's founding. Ethan walked among them, exchanging polite words, observing subtle cues, and asking questions without revealing his suspicions. He noticed Varric at the far end of the hall, speaking privately to two younger nobles. The words were muted, but Ethan could read the tension in their gestures. One noble looked nervous, glancing repeatedly at Varric, while the other nodded hesitantly. Ethan realized that Varric's influence extended beyond the obvious. He had allies who could act at the right moment to derail the treaty. Ethan decided on a direct but careful approach. He approached the younger nobles later, speaking in a tone that was firm yet respectful. "I understand you may have concerns about humans," he said quietly, "but our goal is peace and mutual benefit. I ask only that you consider the evidence before accepting fear as truth. Observe actions, not just words." The nobles listened, hesitation in their eyes. By the end of the evening, they seemed to understand Ethan's sincerity, though fear and doubt remained. It was a small victory, but it was progress. The next challenge came when Varric himself requested a private meeting. Ethan understood the gravity of this. To refuse would be insulting, but to accept was dangerous. He chose to approach it with openness and careful diplomacy. In a quiet chamber within the palace, Varric waited, his posture confident and his expression guarded. "Human diplomat," he said smoothly, "I have heard much about you. Trials passed, bond formed, praise given. Yet I wonder, do humans truly understand our world, or do they see it only through ambition and cleverness?" Ethan met his gaze evenly. "Varric, humans have made mistakes, but we also bring creativity, courage, and adaptability. I'm here to build peace, not to dominate. That is my purpose, and it is true." Varric smiled faintly, a calculated expression. "We shall see." Intentions are easily spoken. Actions are more revealing. Can you navigate our politics and earn trust from those who doubt you? Can you prove that your bond with Princess Lyria is more than a symbol? Ethan understood the subtle challenge. Varric was testing not just his honesty, but his ability to act strategically, fairly, and wisely under scrutiny. Over the following days, Ethan continued his careful work. He attended council sessions, observed debates, and found opportunities to show human ingenuity in problem-solving. When a dispute arose over the allocation of resources to distant colonies, Ethan proposed a solution that balanced efficiency and fairness, earning approval from both human and Xipheran representatives. Meanwhile, he worked quietly with Lyria, sharing observations and discussing strategy. Their conversations deepened their understanding of one another. Lyria revealed her concerns about her people's perception of humans, while Ethan shared insights about human culture and values. Together, they formed a partnership based on trust, intelligence, and respect. One evening, an unexpected crisis tested Ethan's abilities further. A minor transport vessel carrying Xipheran supplies encountered mechanical failure near the planet's outer colonies. Varric had planned to use this incident as evidence of human incompetence, spreading fear that cooperation with humans was risky. Ethan acted quickly. Using both human technical knowledge and Xipheran engineering, he coordinated a rescue operation, stabilizing the vessel and ensuring safe delivery of supplies. By demonstrating competence and reliability, he not only averted disaster but also undermined Varric's influence. The council took notice. Nobles who had been hesitant now began to respect Ethan's abilities and judgment. Even Varric appeared slightly unsettled, realizing that the human diplomat was more capable than he had anticipated. Throughout these events, Ethan's bond with Lyria continued to strengthen. They shared moments of quiet reflection in the palace gardens, discussing the future of their peoples and the challenges they faced. Lyria expressed admiration for Ethan's patience, insight, and courage, while Ethan recognized the wisdom, fairness, and subtle intelligence that made her a capable leader. "You are proving that humans can be trusted, Ethan," Lyria said one evening, her voice soft. "Not through words alone, but through action. That is something few outsiders achieve." Ethan smiled. "I am learning from you as much as you are learning from me. Trust is not given lightly, especially here. But I believe that humans and Xipherans can achieve something extraordinary together." Lyria's eyes glimmered with thoughtfulness. "Perhaps this bond, once accidental, is now a symbol of possibility, of what our peoples can achieve when we combine courage, intelligence, and understanding." By the end of the week, Ethan had navigated the majority of political obstacles. Evidence of Varric's subtle manipulations had been gathered, and the council was beginning to see the potential of human-Xipheran cooperation. Ethan realized that diplomacy was as much about patience and observation as it was about negotiation. That night, as he looked out over Luminara, Ethan felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. The hidden agendas had been uncovered, the conspiracies addressed, and trust had begun to grow. Yet he knew the mission was far from complete. Challenges would continue, and the bond with Princess Lyria would demand careful attention and integrity. But for the first time, he felt that the future was within reach, not only for the humans he represented, but for the Xipherans who had welcomed him, cautiously yet curiously, into their world. The trials of trust had shown Ethan that being human was more than survival or cleverness. It was empathy, courage, and the ability to navigate complexity with wisdom and heart. And with that understanding, he knew that he and Lyria were not just allies. They were partners in shaping the destiny of two civilizations. As the city of Luminara glowed under the twin moons, Ethan allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. The hidden agendas had been revealed, the first waves of political intrigue navigated, and the bond with Lyria had grown stronger. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but he was ready. Because being human was not just about reacting to circumstances. It was about thinking, adapting, and leading, even when faced with the unknown. And that was a power Xyphera had never truly seen before. The sun rose over Luminara, casting golden light across the crystalline towers of Xyphera's capital. Ethan Cade stood on the palace balcony, looking out over the city he had come to admire. After weeks of trials, negotiations, and careful diplomacy, the day of the peace treaty had finally arrived. The events of the past weeks had tested him in ways he had never imagined. From accidental bonding with Princess Lyria to political intrigue, trials of mind, courage, and heart, he had navigated a world completely different from his own. And now, the future of two civilizations rested on the outcome of today's council meeting. Princess Lyria joined him on the balcony, her regal presence calm yet commanding. "Human," she said softly, "the council awaits. Today we'll decide whether peace is formalized and whether our peoples can move forward together. Ethan nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and responsibility. We've done everything we can to prepare. Now it's about presenting what we've accomplished and showing that humans and Zypherans can work together. The Hall of Councils was filled with nobles, advisors, and representatives from both Zyphera and Earth. The air was tense, heavy with anticipation. At the center stood Lyria, her composure steady, while Ethan approached, aware that every gesture, every word, and every glance would be observed. Marek, standing nearby, gave him a subtle nod of encouragement. Ethan took a deep breath and began to speak. "Honored members of the Zypheran Council," Ethan said, his voice firm and clear. "I stand before you not as a conqueror, not as a politician seeking advantage, but as a representative of humanity. My mission has been to foster understanding, cooperation, and peace. Over the past weeks, I have learned much from your culture, your wisdom, and your values, and I hope that you have seen, through our actions, that humans seek partnership, not dominance." A murmur ran through the room. Some nobles looked skeptical, others thoughtful. Ethan continued. "Together, humans and Zypherans have faced challenges, cultural trials, simulations of crisis, and political disputes. Through these, we have learned that cooperation is possible, that differences can be bridged, that trust can be earned and respected. Today, I ask you to formalize this trust, to join us in a treaty that ensures peace, mutual respect, and shared prosperity for our peoples." The council fell silent. All eyes turned to Princess Lyria. She stepped forward, her presence commanding yet serene. "My people," she began, "we have watched, listened, and observed. We have tested this human, Ethan Cade, and through his actions, he has proven his courage, integrity, and wisdom. The bond between us, once accidental, has grown into a partnership built on understanding and respect. It is a symbol, not of one individual, but of what humans and Zypherans can achieve together." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I propose that we formalize the peace treaty today, recognizing our alliance and committing to a shared future. This treaty is not merely political. It is a statement that two civilizations, different yet capable of cooperation, can shape a better galaxy together." The council erupted in discussion. Some nobles expressed doubts, citing tradition and fear of the unknown. Others spoke of opportunity, progress, and the potential for shared knowledge and technology. Ethan watched carefully, noting the subtle gestures and expressions. He realized that the tide was turning slowly but decisively. Varric, who had been the most vocal opponent, stood at last. His gaze met Ethan's, sharp and calculating. "Human," he said, "you have navigated our trials and impressed many, yet caution is necessary. How do we know that this alliance will endure, that humans will honor their word?" Ethan stepped forward, meeting Varric's gaze evenly. "I cannot promise perfection," he said, "but humans value trust, integrity, and action guided by principle. I have shown these through every trial, every decision, and every interaction. The bond I share with Princess Lyria is a reflection of that commitment. If we work together, we can face challenges honestly, fairly, and courageously. That is the foundation of lasting peace." Varric studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. It was not full approval, but it was enough. The remaining nobles, inspired by Ethan's words and Lyria's leadership, began to voice support. After hours of discussion, debate, and careful negotiation, the council reached a consensus. The treaty was signed, formalizing the Human-Zypheran alliance. Cheers and applause filled the hall. Ethan felt a surge of relief and accomplishment. The mission, which had begun with uncertainty and fear, had succeeded. Outside the council hall, Lyria smiled at him, her eyes reflecting pride and warmth. "Human, you have done more than I could have hoped. You have not only preserved peace, but you have also strengthened understanding between our peoples. Your actions have shown that humans, though different, are capable of great courage, wisdom, and empathy." Ethan bowed slightly, humbled by her praise. "Princess, it is thanks to your guidance and wisdom that this was possible. Together, we have achieved something extraordinary." The days following the treaty were filled with celebration and reflection. Ethan participated in ceremonies honoring the alliance, met with nobles who had once opposed him, and engaged in discussions about future cooperation, technology sharing, scientific collaboration, and cultural exchange. Everywhere he went, humans were no longer seen as outsiders, but as partners capable of contributing to Zyphera's future. Amid these events, Ethan and Lyria shared quieter moments, walking through the glowing palace gardens or sitting by the crystal fountains that reflected the twin moons. Their conversations deepened, exploring not just politics but philosophy, hopes, and visions for the future. "You have shown Zyphera that humanity is not to be feared," Lyria said one evening, her gaze on the shimmering water. "But you have also shown me something more, how courage, empathy, and ingenuity can shape destiny, even in a world far from your own." Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth he had not expected. "I have learned as much from you, Princess. Your wisdom, fairness, and vision have guided me. Perhaps the bond between us was meant to do more than symbolize unity. It was meant to show that we can achieve greatness together." In the weeks that followed, the Human-Xypheran alliance began to take shape. Trade routes were established, collaborative research projects began, and cultural exchanges flourished. Humans brought technology, adaptability, and creativity, while Xypherans shared wisdom, advanced engineering, and unique perspectives. Together, they faced challenges, solved problems, and explored the possibilities of mutual cooperation. Ethan reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He remembered the nervousness he had felt when he first arrived, the accidental gesture that had bound him to Lyria, the trials of mind, courage, and heart, and the hidden agendas he had uncovered. Each challenge had tested him, shaped him, and proven that humanity's greatest strengths lay not in brute force, but in adaptability, intelligence, and empathy. One evening, as he stood on the palace balcony overlooking Luminara, Lyria joined him. "Ethan," she said, "look at our city, our people, and the possibilities that lie ahead. We have faced uncertainty, navigated conflict, and emerged stronger. This is only the beginning. Together, humans and Zypherans can explore the galaxy, build understanding, and create a future of peace." Ethan nodded, feeling the truth of her words. "And it begins here, Princess, with trust, courage, and partnership. Our bond is more than a gesture. It is a promise to our peoples, a symbol of what we can accomplish when we work together." The twin suns of Zyphera dipped below the horizon, casting the city in hues of purple and silver. For the first time, Ethan felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Humanity had proven itself, not through power, conquest, or domination, but through wisdom, creativity, and integrity. The humans who had come to Zyphera as strangers were now allies, respected and valued for what they could contribute. Lyria turned to him, a small smile on her lips. "Human history will remember this moment. Not for the challenges we faced, but for how we overcame them together." Ethan returned the smile. "And the story is far from over, Princess. The galaxy is vast, full of possibilities. But with courage, understanding, and partnership, humans and Zypherans can shape it for the better." As night fell over Luminara, the city glowing under the light of the twin moons, Ethan and Lyria stood side by side, looking toward the stars. The trials, the conspiracies, and the unexpected bond had led to a new era, a future where two civilizations could stand together, united by trust, respect, and the uniquely human ability to adapt, create, and inspire. For Ethan Cade, the mission had begun as a task, evolved into a challenge, and now had become a legacy. Humanity had proven its worth, not as conquerors, but as partners capable of shaping the destiny of worlds beyond their own. And with that realization, he felt the promise of tomorrow, a galaxy where differences could be bridges rather than barriers, and where courage, ingenuity, and empathy could illuminate even the most distant stars. The story of humans and Zypherans, once uncertain and fragile, now shone brightly, an alliance forged in trust, tested in trials, and destined to inspire generations to come.